This morning, we are very honored to have with us representatives from the courts and from the Board of Public Defense. And so thank you for being here, Mr. Shorba. You made it all the way over from the court building via tunnel, I'm sure. And what my plan here is, folks, is we'll let them give their entire presentation, and then we'll take member questions after that. So, Mr. Shorba, thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
Good morning, Chair Scott, Vice Chair Hudson, and members of the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee. My name is Jeff Shorba, and I have the distinct honor of serving as Minnesota's State Court Administrator for the Judicial Branch. And I'm really pleased to be with you today. We are willing to come anywhere and tell our story, and so we really appreciate the invitation from the Chair to come here, and also hopefully seek your support for the 26-27 fiscal year budget. So just a little bit of an overview. The Judicial Branch's mission is to provide justice through a system that assures equal access for the fair and timely resolution of cases and controversies. That mission is enshrined in Article 1, Section 8 of the Minnesota Constitution, which promises that every person is entitled to access justice freely, promptly, and without delay. And upholding this promise is the most fundamental obligation of our state's court system. The Minnesota Judicial Branch comprises 3 levels of courts: Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, and 87 district courts across the state. We currently have a total of 322 judges and roughly 2,800 court staff processing the 1 million cases that are filed in our district courts each year. Those judges and staff work in 103 court locations, actually more than any other part of state government. Our current fiscal year 25 budget is approximately $479 million, which is approximately 1% of the state's budget. And we believe that is a modest investment in a court system that is viewed as among the most innovative and well-managed in the entire country. Our district courts, our trial courts, are organized into districts. There are 10 judicial districts in the state, which you can see on this map. The boundaries are set by statute. We have 2 one-county districts, 2nd Judicial District in Ramsey and the 4th Judicial District in Hennepin. The rest range between 7 counties and 17 counties. In fact, our largest district in terms of area, the 9th District in Northwest Minnesota, is larger than 10 states. So it's quite the geography to cover. This organization into districts serves 2 important purposes. First is for elections. Our district court judges are elected by judicial district and are authorized to hear cases anywhere within the district. And the second is for administrative purposes. Each district has a chief judge, district administrator, who share responsibility for managing the district. Turning now to our administrative structure, the Chief Justice, currently Natalie Hudson, is the administrative head of the system and responsible for the overall management of the entire judicial branch. She serves as chair of the Minnesota Judicial Council, which is the single administrative policy-making body for the judicial branch. Each of our 10 districts and both of our appellate courts have representation on that body. I serve, along with my employees, as staff to the Judicial Council. We provide central administrative infrastructure services to the entire judicial branch, including human resources, finance, legal, research, information technology, and statewide program management. The Chief Justice, of course, leads the Supreme Court, which continues to have the responsibility for regulating the practice of law, including the promulgation of statewide rules of procedure and practice for all courts of the state. There is a chief judge of the Court of Appeals appointed by the governor who serves as the head of that court. And there's also a chief judge in each district elected by the branch who is responsible for management of the entire district. The chief judge is assisted, as I mentioned, by a judicial district administrator, and then there are county court administrators doing operation work in each of the counties. As part of our efforts to ensure fair and timely access to justice and uphold the constitutional rights of Minnesotans, our courts have the responsibility to deliver and pay for many different types of services pursuant to Minnesota statute. Under Minnesota Statute 480.182, the branch is required to pay for several court-related costs, including guardian ad litem services, court interpreters, mental health examinations in criminal and civil commitment cases, and jury program expenses. Our courts are seeing significant increases in the needs for many of these services, and you'll hear me talk about the rising cost of delivering these services later in my presentation. Here again is a reminder that the judicial branch, the third branch of government that protects the constitutional rights of Minnesotans and processes those million cases, represents just a tiny fraction of our state's general fund budget. Our courts are funded almost entirely through legislative appropriation. All of the revenue we collect through court fines and fees is deposited in the state's general fund or to local government or other statutorily mandated programs. We do not retain any of that revenue. We depend on your appropriation to fund the vital work of the judiciary. On behalf of the branch, I would like to thank you for the significant investment in the state's justice system in 2023 and 2024. We generously received approximately $86 million in ongoing funding and approximately $52 million in one-time funding. Through this funding, we are able to make our compensation structure more competitive with our public sector peers, helping to ensure our courts have the qualified judges and staff needed to maintain timely and effective access to justice. We eliminated the pandemic backlog of felony and gross misdemeanor cases. While many other states are still wrestling with backlogs and delays stemming from the pandemic, we are proud to say that we've reduced our pending caseloads to pre-pandemic levels. We enhanced courtroom technology to expand access to justice through the use of remote and hybrid court hearings. We temporarily addressed budget deficits in critical court programs such as psychological services, court interpreter, jury, and cybersecurity. We sustained 4 recently launched treatment courts to expand access to these vital and very successful court programs. We also raised the payment rates for court interpreters and provided a modest pay increase for psychological examiners to help us keep pace with the payment rates of our public sector peers. These investments and their impacts highlight the power of partnership between the legislature and the judiciary. However, ongoing challenges and demands require sustained investment to ensure courts remain accessible, secure, and effective. In addition to the progress we made through legislative appropriations, I'm proud to report that this was another year of important and historic accomplishments for our state's courts. Earlier this year, the Minnesota Council adopted a new district court hearing framework that will determine how our courts use both in-person and remote court hearings to deliver justice to the people of Minnesota from now into the future. This new framework reflects all of the lessons and experiences we gained leveraging remote hearing technology during the pandemic and is the culmination of 3 years of work to listen to court users and make our courts more accessible and effective. That historic new framework will officially take effect on February 3rd. In addition, over the past few years, we have launched several technology enhancements to improve the court experience, such as the Minnesota Digital Exhibit System, a new e-check-in system for court hearings, and an online scheduling tool for DOC incarcerated individuals. The judicial branch has strengthened its collaboration with justice partners to address these justice-related issues. The Minnesota Judicial Council created a new mental health justice initiative to foster collaboration between the branch, justice partners, and community members to improve outcomes for individuals who are living with mental illness. We are also meeting regularly with court interpreters and psychological examiners through newly established work groups to explore options for improving the delivery of these critical services. I'd now like to turn your attention to the Judicial Branch's 26-27 budget request. We recognize that this session begins with a challenging budget forecast, requiring you to make very difficult decisions about how to allocate limited resources. The branch remains committed to being an exemplary steward of public funds, and we approach the process of submitting our biennial budget request with the utmost care and responsibility. At the same time, as a co-equal branch of government, we have a duty to our employees, judges, and the people of Minnesota to secure the funding necessary to fulfill our constitutional obligation. Justice delayed is justice denied. Given the modest share of the state budget allocated to the judiciary, we respectfully urge our partners in the executive and legislative branches to prioritize the essential role of the courts. This budget request is focused on helping our courts address some of the key challenges facing our judiciary at this moment. As I go through these next slides, I'll highlight some of the key challenges and talk about how our budget request aims to address those issues. The judiciary's ability to deliver timely and effective justice depends on its people. Judges and staff are the foundation of our court system, ensuring that it operates smoothly and effectively. However, the judicial branch is facing significant recruitment and retention challenges that jeopardize its ability to sustain operations. The first key challenge is a compensation gap. A recent market study revealed that salaries for judges and staff lag significantly behind those offered by other public sector employers in Minnesota. This disparity creates a competitive disadvantage, making it increasingly difficult to attract and retain talent. The second challenge is increasing turnover. Since 2020, the judicial branch's employee turnover rate has risen by 15%, while the number of applicants for each open position has fallen by 27%. The leading reason employees cite for leaving is inadequate compensation. So to address these challenges, the branch is requesting $77.3 million in 26-27 and $104 million in 28-29 to increase judicial salaries by what our market study told us we need to do, which is 6%. Fund the employer's share of anticipated health care cost increases. We just follow the state insurance plan, and you know those costs always go up. And cover the increased cost of leasing office space. We have a building across the street, the Judicial Center, and our landlord is the same as yours, the Department of Administration, and we are told that costs are going to go up for all of us. So this investment is really, really critical. The next part of our request relates to digital accessibility. Justice must be accessible to all, including Minnesotans with disabilities. And the Minnesota Judicial Branch has had a long-standing commitment to providing accommodations that ensure access to our courts. In recent years, we have also taken proactive steps to enhance the digital accessibility of our online resources. Then in April of last year, the Department of Justice at the federal level issued a rule amending the American with Disabilities Act to establish specific digital accessibility requirements for state and local governments. These requirements must be met by April 24th, 2026. To achieve compliance with these new federal guidelines, we have launched a significant project to review and ensure that all of our online resources and content are digitally accessible and meet these new federal standards. It's a major undertaking requiring the remediation of over 1 million web and case-related documents, revisions to more than 1,800 web and Minnesota Court Information System templates, and updates to approximately 22 information technology applications. So to support this effort, the branch is requesting $5.1 million in fiscal year 26-27 and $1.76 million in 28 and 29. And this one-time funding will be used to remediate our existing online resources and provide training on digital accessibility best practices throughout the judicial branch. The smaller ongoing funding will be used to ensure our ongoing compliance with these new ADA requirements and to maintain existing software and licensing costs. This is an extremely important effort, not only for ensuring our compliance with federal guidelines, but also to ensure fair and timely access to court information and resources. I next want to talk about our efforts to improve how we share court records and information with our justice partners. Since 2003, the branch has provided electronic access to court documents and other case records for statewide justice partner agencies through a small number of discrete legacy applications. Over the past 2 years, vendor support for several of these aging applications was discontinued due to cybersecurity and ongoing maintenance concerns. In response, we formed a statewide work group of justice partners to discuss best practices and provide feedback on accessing court records and information using branch-provided tools. Through the Justice Partner Access User Group, the branch held a series of 19 feedback sessions, which involved more than 100 individuals representing justice partner agencies, advocacy groups, and private attorneys. Through those sessions, the group identified many ways to improve how our courts share records and data. So this session, we are requesting $4 million in 26 and 27 and $800,000 in 28 and 29 to implement the Justice Partner Access User Group's recommendations and develop a modern access system with improved functionality, reliability, and security. This one-time funding would be used to develop and implement the new Justice Partner Access application. The ongoing funding would be used to maintain, again, the hardware and software licensing and deliver training and education on the new tool to end users. This request is really an important investment in strengthening our collaboration with justice partners and ensuring the efficient and secure sharing of court records and information. By implementing these recommendations, we can modernize our systems to meet current needs, improve functionality, and ensure security. The next part of our budget request is focused on ensuring we can find qualified examiners to meet the growing need for psychological evaluations in our court system. The need for forensic medical evaluations in criminal and civil commitment cases has really surged in recent years, with a 143% increase between fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2023. This sharp rise has put significant pressure on the branch's capacity to meet this critical need, not only to pay for the rising costs of delivering these services, but in being able to find an adequate number of qualified examiners to conduct these evaluations in a timely manner. We are deeply appreciative of the legislature's action last session to raise the pay rate for forensic examiners from $125 to $136 per hour, the first increase we have seen since 2009. However, despite this progress, the branch continues to face a shortage of qualified examiners on its roster. This shortage creates delays in conducting evaluations and hinders the timely administration of justice and potentially civil liberties. So over the past summer, we conducted a comprehensive review of examiner pay rates across various markets and areas of practice. Based on that analysis, we believe we need to increase our pay rates for contract examiners to $175 per hour to remain competitive with the broader market and ensure we can find examiners to conduct these evaluations. So we are seeking $7.2 million in FY 26-27 to increase the hourly pay rate from $136 to $175 to align with market rates and make sure the judiciary is still competitive. The next section of our budget request relates to the compensation we provide to Minnesotans called to jury service. Jurors are the cornerstone of our justice system, and a representative jury pool is essential to maintaining public trust and confidence in the courts. However, the current $20 per day juror per diem fails to account for the financial burdens jurors often face, including transportation costs, parking, meals, childcare, and lost income from missed work. This low compensation creates barriers for many individuals, particularly those with lower incomes, small business owners, farmers. These barriers can reduce participation and really affect the representation in jury pools. Feedback from potential jurors frequently highlights the inadequacy of the current per diem as a significant obstacle to serving. So to address these challenges, the branch is requesting $18 million in 26-27 to increase the juror per diem from $20 per day to $100 per day. This increase was figured based not only on looking at what other states are doing, but also looking at what me as a hairdresser, me as a farmer, me as a independent business person would need to have in order just to meet the minimum wage. So times 8 hours gets you to about $100 when you look at the minimum wage that we have here in the state. We believe that we should be as good as North Dakota. They just raised their rate to $100 per day. I don't say that disparagingly, but I do think that we can be competitive. So we also want to raise the mileage rate to be in line with the federal rates. Mandated services funding. So I talked a little bit about this before. The judiciary is statutorily required to provide interpreters, psychological exams, jury services to ensure access to justice and uphold constitutional obligations. However, rising demand has created a significant deficit in these areas. As I mentioned, the need for psychological exams has increased 143%. The number of interpreter events in our district courts have nearly doubled since 2019. Covering right now 134 different languages in Minnesota. And at the same time, we've seen printing, postage, and other costs place strain on our jury program budget. So last year, the legislature provided temporary funding to address these deficits through 27, and we're grateful for that support. However, the costs continue to rise. They're not going down. And so we would seek permanent funding in the 28 and 29 biennium to provide long-term solutions. Finally, we all know how important the issue of cybersecurity is, critical to ensuring the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the sensitive data entrusted to the judicial branch. Our cybersecurity program is designed to protect this information through a carefully coordinated suite of technology, processes, procedures to ensure that the public, private, and sealed data remain secure and reliable. As cybercrime becomes increasingly organized and cyber criminals continually adapt their methods, the branch must evolve its defenses to stay ahead of these threats. The need has never been greater in the cybersecurity area. We are deeply grateful, again, for the one-time funding the legislature provided last session for our cybersecurity program. However, this funding, again, is set to expire in '27, leaving a critical gap in our ability to sustain essential protections. We want to stay ahead of the cyber criminals, but we need to invest in order to do that. So here you have this request on this slide. You can see a summary of the overall biennial budget request. In total, our budget request represents a 12% increase over the fiscal year 26-27 starting biennial base budget. And we have carefully debated options, alternatives, ideas to get to this request. So let me conclude by just reminding you again, the judicial branch is not just another government agency. We're a co-equal branch of government and a cornerstone of our democracy. I think I don't need to remind you all the things that are going on in our courts right now, and so we need support. And we really take great pride in all of the progress that we've been able to achieve together and our continued partnership with the legislature. And we think we can even further strengthen our judiciary and build a more equitable, effective, and resilient system for future generations. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the invitation and your commitment to the people of Minnesota. And I'm certainly available today and any other day to come and answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shorba. And is Ms. Lehman, is she presenting today as well? No. Oh, man, I was going to call her up to the table.
Well, you can call her up. She may have something to say.
She can be your phone a friend.
There you go. I may need her, so we'll see.
Thank you, Mr. Shorba, for your presentation. And we have a couple of member questions. And first on the list is Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have 4 questions. Can I just fire away?
Go ahead.
You know me. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you were going through your presentation, 4 questions came up. So the treatment courts, so you have 4 newly launched treatment courts. Can you let me know about what is the amount that you're providing for them each year?
Mr. Shorba.
Madam Chair, Representative Rarick. I don't have that number off the top of my head. The way the treatment courts work, and you're familiar because you've been here before, we usually start them off with federal funding. And so we have some that are currently federally funded, they have grants. And then once those grants, usually 3 years, are over, then we come to you and ask you to provide the state funding that we need to keep them going. But I'm certainly able to break that down for you and give you more information on treatment courts. As you're aware, treatment courts have been one of the most studied part of government. And all the studies show that they are successful, especially in getting people who've not been successful through other means to lead a more stable and drug-free life. So we're very proud of them.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree wholeheartedly. I was the one that expanded them across the entire state to make sure every jurisdiction, every court could have one, at least one type. There's multiple types of treatment courts. And of course, before I was willing to do that, I think I went to 10 or so different types and different locations of treatment courts before I was willing to do that. So I'm well aware. I actually still serve on the advisory board for Wright County's treatment court. So, and that's really where the question comes from, because I get to sit, with them and hear their challenges. So if you could get back to me as to how much you're funding each of the new treatment courts and then how much you're funding the existing.
Yep.
I understand that some of it is federal and there's a transition time, but that would really help me.
Yep.
Because at least anecdotally from the treatment court that I'm well aware of in Wright County, there may be a gap there, and so I just want to make sure that they are fully funded because they have been incredibly successful. My next question is, you talked about the cost of employees, and I've been on the subcommittee on employee relations for a decade or so and have chaired it in the past. Do you negotiate with the unions for the judicial branch, or does the executive branch negotiate for those employee unions?
Mr. Shorba.
Madam Chair, Representative Rarick, we do all of our own negotiations. We have our own compensation structure. We currently have 3 unions. We're represented court reporters are represented by Teamsters. We have 9 of our districts that are represented. 1 district has no union employees. And we have to negotiate with ASME in a number of districts, and then the Teamsters again in 2 districts. Very complicated. We have a whole bunch of unrepresented employees. All the people who work across the street here are not part of a union. So our compensation time is very busy, and I have my HR director here who looks very tired from going through all this. But so we do our own. We do not go through the executive branch.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. You should have the power over your own employees, including the negotiations with the union. So I'm glad to hear that. I'm not sure why I didn't know that after 10 years being on the SCR, so I appreciate you saying that. Next question is what is the availability of mental health counselors? And I'm really interested in the return to competency. So if you need to return someone to competency, is there easy access and availability of counselors and therapists to send them to, or is that a lack?
Mr. Shorba.
Madam Chair, Representative Rarick, I'm going to delve into this area. That's one of the reasons why we established this mental health advisory group. And we're bringing people not only from the judicial branch, but providers, attorneys, the bar, public defenders together to talk about the issue. We're sort of at the front end of the issue in terms of doing the exams. We're not involved in the mental health support part of it. Of course, they would come back to the court to see if they're competent to stand trial. So the issue that we're dealing with in our budget is really trying to get someone to first say whether they are competent and whether they can go to trial. And that's where we're having the problem. I would not disagree with you that there is a shortage. I was just at a meeting in Olmsted County with a whole bunch of people to talk about mental health needs, and unfortunately, some of the most severely mentally ill are sitting in jails waiting to have either exams or to have a treatment bed, because there are very few treatment beds. They're very expensive and they're scarce. So it's a big issue. We're hoping to collaborate together with this group, and I don't know what solutions we'll come up with, but it is a very, very big problem.
And Representative Rarick, my understanding from staff here is that next Tuesday, we're going to be hearing from that competency board. So save your questions for that, too. Do you have another question?
Yes, Madam
Representative
Chair. Thank you. So my last question is very short. Just, you had talked about forensic examiners, and what is the qualification? So the degree or licensure that needs to be attained for that position?
Mr. Shorba.
Madam Chair, Representative Rarick, it's set by statute, and usually the individuals have to be either a psychiatrist or a psychologist and licensed. We have, during the pandemic, tried to expand our pool a little bit by getting even individuals who can do these exams remotely from other states, because people are retiring and they're just not getting into this field. And if they are, they're probably going to DHS, which pays more than we do. So we are very, very stretched. But if you've ever not only sat in on an exam, but also looked at the reports, these are very voluminous reports that they do to try to determine competency and other kinds of things. Because if you are institutionalized for some reason because you are mentally ill, that is taking away your civil liberties. So it's a really important job, and we're very grateful for the ones we have. We just don't have enough. Thanks for the question.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, that's a very high level. It's one of the highest level degrees and licensures. So PhD level, I could see why that would be difficult to obtain. We don't have a lot of those throughout the entire United States. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Good questions. Representative Engen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Shorbel, for this. I saw that you guys made it through that pandemic backlog. Having worked in Hennepin County in the courts during kind of the height of the pandemic, I saw that a lot of those virtual hearings was actually attributing to that backlog. People were missing the mail that had the Zoom link in it, or it was being sent to an address that they no longer stayed at. And it seems to me like you guys are kind of maintaining that virtual aspect of court and expanding that to some extent. And I'm sure that comes with a lot of pros, there's a lot of ease that comes with that, but what are some of the challenges that you guys see with this? I'm not sure that it's always appropriate, and it definitely comes with its own issues, so I want to hear a little bit about what you guys think about that.
Mr. Shorba.
Madam Chair, Representative Engen, that's a very important question, and that's why we've spent 3 years studying this. If you had asked me on day one of the pandemic how to operate court remotely, I would have told you we're making it up as we go along because we weren't able to plan. We didn't know a pandemic was coming. Now, years later, I think we've got it much better under control. We've instituted technology in our courtrooms to allow us to better access individuals. We have trained staff to take over some of these Zoom hearings in a way that they didn't know on day one of the pandemic. Our judges took a lot of time and effort to try to get them to understand how to make the courtroom of a Zoom link something that was like the courtroom in person. And we agree with you. This is not for every kind of hearing. If you have a jury trial, if you have an evidentiary hearing, you're coming to the courthouse. But for situations, and I know the public defenders are going to be talking to you next, but for situations where we may have a 15-minute hearing or a whole day of 15-minute hearings, attorneys, and we've heard this from the public defenders and others, are able to get to more of these and represent individuals. And mostly we heard from people who just don't go to court very often. And in order to go downtown Minneapolis, pay for parking, take time out, childcare, all kinds of things, they would rather just take a break from their job for 15 minutes and be present. So we have set out a very distinct framework for when we think it's appropriate, when we don't think it's appropriate, and we're going to study it February 3rd till the end of the year, and we may change. We may change things.
Representative Engen, follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that. Definitely agree with you. I'd be curious to see what the numbers shake out to be when it comes to percentage of increase or decreases in failures to appear, for example. Is that something that you guys can provide to the committee?
Mr. Shorba.
Madam Chair, Representative Engen, absolutely. And we have already seen that failures to appear have gone down.
Terrific. Awesome.
Representative Engen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Second question here, cybersecurity challenges. Could you give me some details or some insight as to what it is that you guys are currently dealing with in this ever-changing criminal act?
Mr. Shorba.
Madam Chair, Representative Engen, I'll be a little bit circumspect because obviously this is a public hearing, and I'm happy to come with my IT director and talk to you in person. We are seeing the same kind of attacks that others have seen. Fortunately, we have done a lot of work. We did have an attack probably 6 years ago that took down some things for a short period of time, but we were able to bring it back up, and we were able to staff up our cybersecurity team. I'll talk, maybe just give you an example of another state, Kansas. Kansas had a cybersecurity attack, and they had to go back to paper, and they were down for well over a month. Knock on wood, we haven't had that happen here, but we don't want to get behind. And so we actually sent some of our team down to Kansas to help them out because we are sort of becoming a leader in the cybersecurity area. So I'm happy to come and give you a few more details in person.
Representative Engen.
That's terrific to hear. Great job, you guys. Would definitely take you up on that offer. But third and final question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Representative Engen.
Thank you. Psychological and interpreter percentage increases. I mean, that seems pretty staggering if we're talking about twice the need for this. I know we're kind of saying it's one time because we're seeing this dramatic spike, but are you guys, first off, why are you seeing these increases? And second, do you assume that they're going to be long-term trends now?
Mr.
Madam Chair, Representative Ingen, we believe there are long-term trends. We are having more individuals who speak foreign languages living now in Minnesota. That's why those interpreter events are going up. And those are not only foreign languages, but sign language as well that we need to provide constitutionally and statutorily. And we're seeing more mentally ill people coming into the court system because they're getting into trouble on the street, whether that's due to homelessness or due to alcohol abuse or drug abuse or not having a place to go, and then they do something that brings them into the court system. So we had a very interesting conversation in Rochester with our police officer colleagues who are dealing with this issue daily, and it's really become an epidemic. So I do not think these costs are dramatically going to go down unless we have figured out some solution, and we're not going to teach everyone English, so we're probably still going to have these interpreter events, and I don't know when we'll solve the mental health crisis.
Representative Ingen.
Well, thank you for that. I think you're 100% spot on, and it also requires us to sit around a round table with the stakeholders, the police groups, our counties, talking about the jail capacity, and yourself, to try to figure out a way that we could actually make this a sustainable and workable initiative going forward. So I appreciate the insight.
Any other member questions? Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Shorba, so kind of going off of what Representative Ingen had to say regarding these dramatic increases in mandated services and hearing your exchange just now that you described it as epidemic and not going down, I'd be interested, and I don't expect you to have this information available here because it's a novel request, but it's one thing to see the numbers presented as they are on this slide. It'd be another thing to look at like trends year over year. I'd be interested in trying to sift out some sort of correlation between what's being done in public policy and this sudden spike in the need for services that doesn't appear to be going down anytime soon. Thank you.
Mr. Shorba.
Madam Chair, Representative Hudson, we are all about data in the judicial branch, so we have more data on everything than I can shake a stick at. So we are happy to provide you with some trends. We're also happy to have any of you get an invitation to come and watch this mental health advisory group meet. All of our meetings are public, but I think the idea of more roundtable discussions is very, very healthy, and we are happy to bring data to the table. My research staff will love it if they get to present some data. So thank you for that question.
Any other member questions? Mr. Shorba, thank you for being here. And I want to just congratulate the courts on getting caught up from all the COVID backlog. I know that was a tall order, and you guys really worked hard to deliver justice as quickly as you could, given the circumstances. So I hope that you feel very, proud about that. That accomplishment. It was no small task. So thank you for being here. And we know how to get a hold of you and who to reach to really, Ms. Lehman, we have a little bit of connection here. So we're always happy to work through her or through you. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Take care.